Good morning. I'm Russell Roybal, Chair of the California Commission on the State of Hate, and I would like to call this commission meeting to order on Wednesday, July 24th, 2024 at 9 a.m. Welcome to the sixth meeting of the year of the California Commission on the State of Hate. Just a couple of housekeeping announcements before we get started. Closed captioning is available for this meeting. The closed captions can be displayed in English or in another language, which will allow you to view an automated live transcript of the meeting in another language. To display closed captions on your screens, please do the following. Click the button labeled Show Captions at the bottom of your Zoom window. Select the box at the bottom of the window labeled Enable Translation. When you see you've enabled translation at the top, select English as the speaking language and select your preferred language in the second menu. Then click Save. Automated captions in your selected language should start appearing at the bottom of your Zoom window. We will send instructions in Spanish in the chat. Before we get started today, I want to welcome Maria Roman Taylorson, who will be serving as the representative for Vice Chair Bamby Salcedo while she is on sabbatical. Maria has been a leader in social services for the transgender community in Los Angeles for over 20 years. I am honored to say I have known Maria most of that time, actually all of that time. She's a member of the Los Angeles Transgender Advisory Board and on the Los Angeles Human Relations Commission and the Gilead Transgender and HIV Research Community Advisory Board. Currently, she serves as the Vice President and Chief Operations Officer at the Trans-Latina Coalition. She is an outspoken voice and an activist and role model for the transgender community. In her capacity as a representative of Vice Chair Salcedo, she will not be able to vote or make motions, but can certainly ask questions and participate in discussion. So welcome, bienvenida, Maria.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here.
Let's now establish our quorum. Deputy Director Watts, will you call the roll?
Sure. Chair Roybal.
Present.
Vice Chair Salcedo is not here. Commissioner Che.
Present.
Commissioner Cuellar.
Here.
Commissioner Damsky.
Good morning.
Commissioner Filer.
Good morning.
Commissioner Levin.
Present.
Commissioner Sinar.
Present.
And Commissioner Suthers.
Present.
Great, thank you. We have a quorum. Let's now move to reviewing the agenda. Today, you may view the agenda, you may view the agenda by visiting the Commission's website or by clicking on the button labeled, by visiting the Commission's website and clicking on the button labeled Meetings and Agendas. We'll send the link to the agenda in the chat. You can find the website of the California Commission on the State of Hate by going to calcivilrights.california.gov and search there, or you can enter California Commission on the State of Hate into any search engine and it will take you to the website. In terms of the agenda today, we have a standard agenda. We'll be approving the minutes from our last meeting and community forum. We'll have a report from the Civil Rights Department. We will do subcommittee updates, then commission member announcements. We'll also have a presentation from Commissioner Levin on national multi-city hate crime trends. And then, of course, we'll do public comment for items not on the agenda, make an announcement about future agenda items, and then we will adjourn the meeting for today. I'd like to now move on to the process for public comments. If you are joining on Zoom and would like to make a public comment, please use the raise hand function feature to join the public comment queue. If you are joining us by phone, you can raise your hand by pressing *9 and *6 to unmute. You may also submit a written public comment by email at csh@calcivilrights ca.gov. We'll put that address in the chat. If you submit a written comment that pertains to an agenda item, we will read it aloud or summarize it when the public comment portion of that agenda item is open and before any vote. If the comment is not about a specific agenda item, we will read it aloud or summarize it during the agenda item titled Public Comment on Items Not on the Agenda. For anyone joining us in the room in Los Angeles at the department's Los Angeles office, please raise your hand for a verbal comment and we will unmute the room. You may also submit a written comment by writing your comment on a piece of paper and handing it to Shanna Hart, our staff member in the room today. In the interest of time, we will limit public comments to 3 minutes per person. If for some reason, due to a disability, you need more time, we can allow that as well. We'll now move on to approval of the minutes from the May Community Forum. We'll then vote on minutes from the last commission meeting. The minutes from the forum are attachment A. We'll post the link in the chat to download attachment A from the commission's website. So let's move on to attachment A, which is the community forums, the minutes from the community forum. Is there a motion to approve the minutes from the community forum?
I have one thing before we move forward, a correction. On page 1 of the minutes, the Shingle Springs Band of Miwok Indians was spelled wrong. Miwok has an O, and this one has an A. So if you guys, if there can just correct that.
Thank you, Commissioner Quayer, for that correction. Commissioner Damsky, I saw your hand.
I was going to move for approval of the minutes with that correction.
Thank you. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Suthers. So we have a motion and a second to approve the minutes from the community forum with the correction as stated by Commissioner Cuellar. Apologies, Commissioner Cuellar, that was spelled wrong.
No worries. Thank you.
Is there any discussion from the commissioners before we move to public comment about the minutes from the community forum? Commissioner Damsky.
Thank you. I wanted to publicly thank Commissioner Cuellar and chair of the community where we met for hosting us, and it was a wonderful discussion. I was very impressed with the large amount of attendance and community input we received. I think it was very well done. Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you,
much, Commissioner Damsky.
Thank you, Commissioner Damsky. I second that, Commissioner Cuellar. I also saw Senate Pro Tem Emerita Toni Atkins this weekend, and she told me how much she enjoyed the tour of the Rancheria and all the facilities. And yes, thank you so much for inviting us there and for showing us all the good work that the tribe is doing, in particular the affordable housing stuff that we got to see. It was very impressive, and thank you for all of that work and for hosting us, of course. Commissioner Levin.
I have to join this gratitude train because yes, it's an impressive event. It's an impressive amount of work that you did with your community with such grace. But for me, the most impressive aspect of this is confirming the fact, and I bring this message to Washington every time I go, it will show in the absence from the data that we have, is that we have multiple jurisdictions and multiple groups that are suffering and their stories aren't told, and they're not being told by the data. So as much as all the wonderful hospitality, and believe me, I am very appreciative and the incredible work you did. But in highlighting this story, which goes untold, and now we have a public record of this, is, I think, indeed the most impressive thing that you've added to this, and my heartfelt, sincere appreciation. And we will be talking more on this because we can't have the Asian American community absent from data. We can't have other communities absent from the data and act like victims don't exist. And if anyone can see that video, I highly suggest you take a look at the presenters there. One of the most incredible public hearings I think that I've seen in some time. Thank you, Commissioner Cuellar, so much.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody that came, and it was an incredible day, and I hope we can do it again. Thank you all.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin, for that comment. We'll now move to public comment. Is there any public comment on the minutes from the community forum?
No public comment.
No public comment. Is there any comment in the room, Shanna?
No comments.
All right, we'll move to a vote. All those in favor of approving the minutes, will call the roll.
Okay, Chair Roybal,
Aye.
Vice Chair Salcedo, Commissioner Che,
Aye.
Commissioner Cuellar,
Aye.
Commissioner Damsky,
Aye.
Commissioner Filer,
Aye.
Commissioner Levin,
Aye.
Commissioner Sinar,
Aye.
and Commissioner Southers. So that's 8 ayes. Excuse me,
Aye.
Commissioner Southers, apologies.
Aye.
Thank you.
The motion carries. The minutes from the community forum are approved. We'll now move on to attachment B, which is the minutes from our last commission meeting. I will entertain a motion to approve the minutes from the last commission meeting, and then we'll enter into discussion. Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Moved by Commissioner Cuellar. Is there a second?
I'll second that. Thank you.
Second by Commissioner Damsky. Any edits, questions, discussion about the minutes from the commissioners? Seeing none, is there any public comment on the minutes from the last commission meeting? Monica, is there any public comment?
No public comment.
And Shanna, is there any public comment in the room?
No comments.
All right, let's move on to approval of the motion, which is to approve the last meeting of the commission, moved by Commissioner Cuellar, seconded by Commissioner Damsky. All those in favor? Alec, will you please call the roll?
Chair Roybal,
Aye.
Vice Chair Salcedo,
Or-
Commissioner Che,
Aye.
Commissioner Cuellar,
Aye.
Commissioner Damsky,
Aye.
Commissioner Filer,
Aye.
Commissioner Levin,
Aye.
Commissioner Sinar,
Aye.
Commissioner Southers.
Aye.
That's 8 ayes.
The motion passes. Thank you, everyone. Now let's move on to the Civil Rights Department report. Today, that report is going to be given by Deputy Director Watts.
Great, thank you, Chair Roybal. So good morning, everyone, and thank you for the opportunity to provide an update about the department. The first update I have for you is that we recently issued the department's 2022 annual report. The report details some of our work in 2022, which includes that we conducted 4,813 investigations into alleged civil rights violations in California. We also obtained 656 settlements, and those settlements resulted in over $12.4 million that went directly to complainants and also generated other types of relief, such as policy changes. The outreach and education team, who you will hear from shortly, conducted nearly 200 presentations, reaching nearly 650,000 Californians in 2022. We also published 6 new guides and fact sheets. I also want to highlight a few examples of recent settlements our department obtained. You may have seen that recently we announced a $14.1 million settlement with Microsoft related to allegations of retaliation and discrimination against workers based on their use of protected leave, including parental, disability, pregnancy, and family caretaking leave. For example, CRD alleged that employees who used protected leave received lower bonuses and unfavorable performance reviews that in turn harmed their eligibility for merit increases, stock awards, and promotions. We also announced a $15 million settlement with Snap, which is known for the Snapchat social media platform. This settlement was related to allegations of sex discrimination and retaliation. And finally, we announced a settlement with a landlord in Oxnard who threatened tenants with eviction based on their perceived immigration status. According to the complaint that was filed with CRD, the property owner allegedly served the family with a 3-day eviction notice that indicated that the family would be removed from the house by the sheriff's office and handed over to the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement for deportation if they did not comply by moving out, and the family moved out. Third update for you is that, as many of you are aware, in May, we recognized 1 year since the launch of California versus Hate. In fact, Chair Roybal represented this commission at the press conference for California versus Hate. California versus Hate also released new data, and I'll highlight a few data points for you today. So in the first full year of operation, California versus Hate had over 2,000 contacts from members of the public seeking assistance, including non-hate related reports. And importantly, they were able to direct people to resources regardless of whether the report was tied to an act of hate. Of those 2,000 reports, California versus Hate was able to determine that 1,020 of the contacts consisted of reports of hate based on the information that the individual provided who was reporting the act. Of those people who reported acts of hate, roughly 4 out of 6, so about 2/3, agreed to follow up with care coordination services such as support accessing legal aid or counseling. I think that really kind of demonstrates the demand for those types of services. Among the reports of hate, 560 contain enough information for California versus Hate to assess the bias motivation. The most cited bias motivations were race and ethnicity, which made up about 35% of that 560, gender identity, which was 15%, and sexual orientation, which is about 11%. Anti-Black, anti-Latino, and anti-Asian bias were the most cited reasons for reports related to race and ethnicity. Then the fourth update for you is I want to wrap up by transitioning into a presentation from our new Assistant Deputy Director of Outreach and Education at CRD, Rashida Harmon, who's on the call today. Rashida Harmon was Senior Counsel on the Outreach and Education team previously and has offered to be with us today to update the Commission on the Department's outreach and education efforts. So with that, I'll turn it over to Rashida.
Thank you so much, Alec. Okay, let me share my screen. How do you share your screen? Here we go. All right, can y'all see it? Thank you. All right, thank you so much, Alec. Hi, everyone. My name is Rashida Harmon. I am the new Assistant Deputy Director of Outreach and Education. Super happy to be here. As Alec said, I am new to this role. I am not new to the department. I was previously Senior Counsel in Outreach and Education at CRD. Just a very brief bio of myself. Prior to CRD, my experience was in supporting currently and formerly incarcerated people on a variety of matters, most recently on a variety of civil matters, such as employment discrimination, housing discrimination, things like that. And I also represented lifers at parole hearings for many, many years. And I also had a appellate practice doing criminal appeals and juvenile appeals for what feels like a very, very long time, about 10 years. Cool. So I just wanted to give a very, very high level update of some of the very awesome things that our team has going on right now. We have been very hard at work. As you know, we are always producing some fantastic written resources, always putting out trainings, which Alec just highlighted a couple things. But some things that we have coming out in 2024 is we have a new fact sheet on discrimination at public businesses. We have updated our harassment prevention guide for employers. Really, this is an existing resource that's been on our website, but we have updated it primarily to account for some differences in terms of how discrimination and harassment investigations happen post-pandemic. You know, things have really shifted. We also have a brand new fact sheet coming out on workplace retaliation. We have a fact sheet coming out on reasonable modifications in housing. And this isn't in the slide, but we have also been working on numerous plain language edits to some of our existing housing fact sheets. So just an effort to make some of our resources more accessible to members of the public. We, for those who don't know, we have had a monthly standing webinar for the past, like, I don't know, 6 months, maybe longer. Time is confusing, but it's been a long time. We have been doing these monthly standing webinars on either Fair Employment 101 or Fair Housing 101. They have been really well attended, but we are adding a new monthly webinar series in addition to those. So each month we will either do fair housing rights for people with disabilities or fair employment rights for people with disabilities, and we'll sort of toggle back and forth. The first one is on fair housing rights for people with disabilities. That is starting on Friday. There is information on how to register at the link on our website for outreach and education. In August, we're going to pivot to legal protections for workers with disabilities. And then again, we'll be going back and forth between housing and employment. I also wanted to highlight that we have been ramping up our efforts around our discriminatory notices program. And so for those that aren't aware, this is a program where we have staff members who comb websites like Craigslist or Zillow, looking for housing and employment ads, posts that may include some discriminatory language. So you'll see here, it says things like no felonies, no felons, no Section 8. That sort of language is against the law. And so what it is we do is we reach out to the poster, typically a housing provider or an employer. We let them know that this sort of language is against the law. We provide some education to them, and we ask them to send back a signed certification letter saying that they will either remove the discriminatory language or take down the post that violates the law. So in the past quarter, we have expanded some of the staff that works on this project. We have also really streamlined some of our existing processes in order to be more efficient and build some more capacity. And most crucially, we have switched to emailing violation letters instead of having folks stuff envelopes and do it snail mail style, which as you can imagine was pretty onerous on our staff, took a very long time. Our efforts have been very fruitful. In the last quarter alone, we have increased the amount of ads that we're reviewing by 405%. We have been sending 146% more compliance letters than the previous quarter, and we've been getting way more signed responses back. So 300% more in the employment context and 533% more compliance letters, signed responses received rather, in the housing context. We have also been working on increasing our presence at in-person events. Particularly, we've been working on reaching out to vulnerable and underserved populations like currently incarcerated people who are preparing for release, monolingual Spanish speakers in rural communities, as well as the elderly. So here's just a smattering of some upcoming events we have. We're going to be at the California State Fair in Sacramento today for Military and Veterans Day. And there's a couple other things that are coming down the pipeline, including we'll be at one of California's women's prisons in Chowchilla in August. I think my predecessor, Lily Harvey, might have flagged the Welcome In program for you all previously, but I wanted to provide some updates and say that we're still hard at work refining the materials for this program, which is slated to launch at the beginning of next year. And so what this is it's a certificate program for businesses basically where they can assure members of the public that they are well versed in civil rights law, that everyone is welcome on their premises, and that their staff is really trained up on how to effectively and proactively respond to incidents of hate, incidents of harassment between patrons, whatever it is. So we provide some training to these businesses. We provide some certifications as part of the training. We do some technical assistance. We provide some sample policy language that they can incorporate into their existing policies. And we have some public signage. So again, they can let patrons know this is a business where you're welcome. And I already sort of mentioned this, but the real benefits of the program are that they equip staff to handle incidents of hate or harassment, really work to create a welcoming environment for people, for all people, and particularly people with protected characteristics. And we really want to encourage folks to report hate acts and incidents through California versus Hate using the portal. Make sure people are aware of that resource and know how to publicly report those things. And then in return, we give them this beautiful certificate of recognition that they can display for their patrons to see. So that is all I have. I don't know if there's any questions or time for questions, but I'm happy to stick around. Oh
Sure.
my gosh, I see hands.
Thank you so much, Director Harmon. Let's move to commission questions. Commissioner Filer.
Yes, thank you for everything you're doing. It's incredible. And thank you, Alec, as well. My one question is, in the workplace harassment that happens, how is it handled when it's after hours, let's say, internet, through technology, be it, Instagram, whatever ways, are we able to deal with that, or?
I'm going to give the most lawyerly answer, which is that it depends, but certainly those kinds of incidents can constitute harassment in the workplace. Without getting too into the weeds about the law, there has to be some sort of a nexus. In other words, someone has to be posting about someone at work, kind of specifically targeting them, like a coworker, for example, in their Instagram post. This wouldn't cover if they were just posting something blue on Instagram that had no relationship to the workplace or their coworkers, but I won't get too into the weeds about that. But long story short, it depends, and certainly those sorts of activities could be harassment.
Commissioner Che.
Yes, well, first of all, I would just want to welcome you, Deputy Director Harmon, welcome you to the really amazing team at CRD, and thank you, Alec, Deputy Director Watson, for your report. I think it's really tremendous to see the robust response that CRD is really leading in response to different forms of hate and discrimination and bias. And there were so many things done, including the name change of the department, because I think there was confusion about what the Department of Fair Employment and Housing was engaged in. But what I wanted to also say is that the outreach and education is so key because it does comport with our own research and surveys that even in an incident where people actually know that something is not right, they don't actually know specifically where they can go for help and the specifics on the law in terms of their rights. So it really is consistent, I think, with the fact that people may instinctively know. The other thing I want to highlight is it is incredible that you are doing outreach specifically to vulnerable populations, those who may be of mixed immigration status and those who I think who have traditionally been stripped of their rights, including voting rights, not thinking that they are entitled. And the final thing that I want to say is I'm really proud of the fact that Stop API Hate initiated the legislation on Welcome In because of our data, because we knew what we saw from our data was that discrimination was happening in the places of business. And so I just wanted to reiterate that this is a pilot, and it is a positive reinforcement because it does benefit businesses when they can state very clearly that that their place of business is welcome to all. One final thing I wanted to say about that is also we heard very clearly from business owners that they were concerned that any responsibilities on the personnel to intervene would put their staff in harm's way. And so we really tried to address that in our No Place for Hate work, which includes Welcome In. And I'm just hearing the new name and I just love it. And thank you so much for all your work.
Thank you. I see another hand.
Sorry, I was on mute. Did you see my lips moving but not hear me? Thank you, Commissioner Chig. Commissioner Sinar.
I also wanted to just thank Deputy Director Harmon for the presentation and for all the work. I had a very quick question, which is, would it be possible to perhaps include in the chat some of the links to the new public materials, especially the fact sheet on discrimination in public businesses? And also just seconding Commissioner Che's comment. I know that Stop API Hate and other groups have done a lot of work around discrimination in businesses. And I'm also really glad to see the Welcome In campaign. I actually, I think if it had been presented in an earlier meeting, I must have missed that presentation. So I'm really glad to hear about the program. And I guess I did have a question about in what way do you think that the program will be assessed going forward? It seems like there's some really important components of it, both as Commissioner Che mentioned, the positive messaging, the kind of just setting out with the flyer, being visible in businesses, just the projecting of kind of a positive norm about inclusivity. I think that's extremely important. And it's interesting that I think that approach is also one that is not about stopping hate crimes, but about embracing the positive message of welcoming in all customers, which struck me as interesting because just in some of the research that the Research and Data Subcommittee has kind of pulled together on effective public messaging around hate, some of the research really is about how do you establish really positive community norms. And so this feels in line with what some of that research has suggested. So I'm curious about how you'll be assessing the campaign, not only well, certainly in terms of who takes it up, what kinds of businesses choose to get certified, in what parts of the state, and any other efforts that you might have to assess the effectiveness of the pilot.
Yeah, I mean, that's a really, really good and thoughtful question. I don't know that I have like a great answer yet, but I know that internally we've been having a lot of discussion about the sort of evaluative piece and like what evaluation of a program like this looks like, what it entails. We've been getting a lot of support from Rebecca Goodsell and Kevin Thomas from the Strategic Initiatives team. So thank you to both of them. I don't know if there's anything you two want to add about that piece, since it's a little bit outside of my wheelhouse, but it is something we're trying to be very, very thoughtful about because, again, it is a pilot, right? So we need to evaluate its effectiveness at the end of the pilot and determine whether the program should continue. One thing I wanted to add to in regards to your first comment about the links, all the things that I named, the various resources, are not live yet, but will be live probably within the next like month or so, particularly the one you raised around the Unruh Act. That should be going up ideally in the next like couple of weeks or a few weeks. So more to come.
Thank you. Deputy Director Watts, can we make sure that we send that to the commission when those go live? Before we get to Commissioner Levin, Kevin or Rebecca, did you have anything you wanted to add on this, on Commissioner Sinar's question?
Yeah, I can just quickly add that one of the two things that we're really concerned around looking at the performance of the program is measuring how the businesses feel as far as their capacity to impact when there is an incident in the facility that they're at. And so how do they, it's really trying to measure that their capacity to impact how people feel in the space. Do they feel like they have the efficacy to actually engage with a consumer that comes in there and does something that potentially feels like it's discriminating to another consumer or to someone that works there. And so trying to measure a pre and post of how do they feel as far as they have the skill set to actually effectively impact that type of situation. And then looking at on the consumer side, do they feel like that space is truly welcoming? So trying to find ways of measuring really that feeling of openness, welcomeness, both on the businesses side and on the consumer side as they go through the businesses.
Thank you, Rebecca. Anything to add? Okay. Thank you. Commissioner Levin.
Thank you. Thank you so much. One of the things I'd be interested in hearing about is, by the way, thank you for this wonderful work. I mean, it's so good to come back to California, go to different states, and it's like the administration that's battling vulnerable people, not right. So, wow, thank you for all you do. Don't think we take it for granted. Wanted to run a question by you because I'm one of the data nerds. One of the things that we found from FBI 2022 was as far as business establishments, the places where we had the most reports, and of course it doesn't mean that's where we had all of them. And one of the things that came off was how diverse a set of business establishments. But the top ones were parking lots and garages, restaurants, commercial office buildings, convenience stores, and I don't know if this comes under that. And that's air and bus terminals. And then bars and nightclubs. So is there a different strategy based on the difference in the type of business and the location, right? Some are densely populated ones that are open only certain hours, and there's actually a physical person, a cashier, a manager to report to, or others are more are establishments more where people's inflow and outflow are much less regular. So anyway, just wanted to hear how you approach the diversity of businesses and structures and traffic that is in different ones for determining how you're going to have that no closed door approach. But in any event, just kudos for the wonderful work, and present anytime. This is just wonderful. No, this is like, why aren't we reading about this in the newspaper? You know, when people attack other people's records of public service for many years, as we're seeing now, why aren't we seeing this? I just want to congratulate you along with my fellow commissioners, and let you answer the question.
Yeah, that's again a really great question. I don't have the answer to that one either, unfortunately. To be honest, I've been in my role, I think it's been about a month now, but I am very much like parachuting in to welcome in, and I'm still, getting up to speed. But I think that these are really interesting considerations that I want to make sure the team is thoughtful about. So maybe I'll hold on answering that one until I can get a little more input from the folks who are leading that work, and then maybe I can come back.
Thank you, Deputy Director Harmon. Good luck. We welcome your leadership in the department, and this is some very important work. So thank you for being here and joining us today. That concludes the Civil Rights Department report. Is there any public comment on the Civil Rights Department report?
Yes, looks like we have a comment from Greg DeGier.
Hi, Greg. Welcome. It's good to see your name on attending. Did you have a public comment? You have 3 minutes.
Yes, I've got a question. First, thank you, Deputy Director Harmon, for this very, very interesting report and for all the work that the department is doing. What either statistical data or the reports of the department's experience can you give us that concerns discrimination and hate violations of one sort or another against people with disabilities. The in the narrower field of hate crimes against people with disabilities are close to virtually never reported either to or by police. In the larger area of including hate crimes, but including also civil violations of all sorts. There was one study a few years ago that surveyed victims, and it reported that of incidents that the victim reported to authorities, and it did not define authorities, but I presume that included both police and civil authorities, such as the department. Nothing happened. More than half said nothing happened, and that's a sample of people who cared enough to respond to the survey. So I'm not sure whether that would be valid across the board, but it's certainly valid for the people who care about it. What information do you have you can give us on that?
Thank you, Greg. Director Harmon? Would you like to respond?
Yeah, so I don't have that data. I think that California versus Hate collects that data, but I don't currently have it in front of me. I know that they have recently compiled a report that contains that information, but I'm not prepared with that report today.
Thank you, Director Harmon.
I'll just
Go ahead, Director Watts.
So as I mentioned earlier, CRD released its annual report recently. And in there, we have data points at least on discrimination complaints and sort of the breakdowns by the sort of reason for the complaint. And disability is a significant number of complaints that we get, at least with employment discrimination, it looks like, and with housing as well. So I'll just post a link to that report. It's in the appendix if you want to take a look at that, Greg.
Thank you, Director Watts. Our next public comment, it looks like, is from Sean Gilbert. Welcome, Sean. Good to see your name in attendance too. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Director, and I appreciate all of you for all the work you're doing. Thank you, Deputy Director Watts, for your report. I have a question for you as well as Deputy Director Harmon. My first question is in regards to the report that you gave with the statistics. I'm wondering, is there a link to reach that report to be able to read?
Yes, so I was just talking about the CRD 2022 annual report. I can also provide a link to the California versus Hate numbers with the data release in conjunction with the 1 year, sort of 1 year since it was first launched. And so I'll put a link to that data in the chat as well.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that. Congratulations, Deputy Director Harmon, on your new position. I'm sure you're on this amazing learning curve. And I appreciate the work in the presentation you offered about the welcoming campaign regarding businesses. My question is, I'm wondering, and this maybe have already come and I just missed it somewhere along the way, excuse me, along the road with some of the meetings I've attended here. But I'm wondering if there is consideration, or if there already is, any outreach and education plans to help with local councils and associations. I live in Contra Costa County, and there's a lot of conversation going on regarding some of the issues that are being presented, like at city councils and PTA meetings and school boards. So I'm wondering if what there might be already happening out there. And thank you so much to all of you.
Thank you, Sean. Deputy Director Harmon.
Well, first, I'm only Assistant Deputy Director, although I appreciate everyone giving me a promotion. That's a great question. We don't have anything currently in the works in terms of like local councils that I'm aware of, but I think it's certainly a great idea. So I'm happy to bring that back to the team for consideration.
Thank you so much. Shanna, is there any public comment in the room in Los Angeles?
No comments.
All right, thank you again to Deputy Director Watts, Deputy Director Harmon. Thank you for being with us today and for sharing this great information. We'll follow up with the commissioners once the links and the work goes live that Deputy Director Harmon was talking about. Again, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
Now let's move on to chair and subcommittee reports. After the reports, depending on how long they take, we'll take a break. So we'll start with the chair's report. First of all, I would like to wish everyone a happy and joyous Disability Pride Month. Disability Pride Month is celebrated every July and honors the anniversary of the Americans with Disabilities Act, which was signed into law on July 26, 1990. Approximately 61 million people in the US have a disability, which is about 1 in 4 people. Last month, June, was Pride Month, and California versus Hate held several Pride tours across the state and are doing some additional ones this month, including this last weekend was San Diego Pride. I think all of you know that I live in San Diego, and so does Commissioner Damsky and sometimes Commissioner Levin. And so California versus Hate had a huge presence at San Diego Pride this year with a contingent in the parade and then a booth at the festival. Commissioners Damsky, Levin, and myself got to march with the parade contingent. It was very exciting. I know Commissioner Damsky is going to share some photos during commissioner member announcements. It was a great event. The visuals that California versus Hate has developed while we were standing by the float waiting to step off, tons of folks were coming by to take pictures in front of the, I don't even know what to call it, Commissioner Damsky, or Commissioner Levin, like it was like just a big thing with all these different visuals around how California is for everyone, that we should protect our chosen family. You'll see it when Commissioner Damsky shares her photos, but it was a really wonderful event. It was a beautiful day. San Diego Pride is the largest civic event in San Diego. And so there are 250,000 people that are lined up on the route to watch the parade. It was a great day, and I want to thank California versus Hate, and in particular Deputy Director Monroe, who's not with us today, for inviting us to be a part of that, and to Commissioners Levin and Damsky for attending. If you could have seen Commissioner Levin on the float the entire way, it was a joy to watch. It was like joy personified, I think, Commissioner Levin. So thank you. And as a reminder, and this, I want to give a personal example of this. You know, California versus Hate has had a huge impact already that you'll see in the report in our state. But last week before Pride, a friend who I haven't actually heard from in a long, long time texted me and told me that they had been a victim of a hate crime in Hemet, which is where they now live. And had gone on the website, but reached out to me because they saw the commission website too. And I literally haven't talked to this person probably in over a decade. And it was great to hear from them, but sad that that was the reason that they reached out. We had a conversation to make sure that he was okay and that he was getting the support he needed. He actually, the next day after I told him about California versus Hate, he called the hotline the next day and was immediately connected to resources. I just checked in with him yesterday, and he's been very appreciative that the hotline exists, that he has somewhere to go because he tried to report it to the police department, and he was not welcome in terms of his reporting. And had a very homophobic interaction with the officer that took the report. I know he's reported that as well to California versus Hate. So very important resource that we have available as an alternative to reporting just to law enforcement. And so I just want to remind everyone that California versus Hate is a resource if you or someone you know is a victim of a hate crime or incident. You can contact the California versus Hate resource line at 833-8-NO-HATE or at California versus Hate, CAVSHATE to get connected to resources and support. And we'll also put that link in the chat. Commissioner Filer.
I just want to say thank you for sharing that. And I think that it's really and how incredible it is we have the hotline. I think as we move into the election, we're going to have more and more incidents happening. And so, you know, and I'm glad to see that there was actually a response and that it's all working. That makes me feel really secure in where we're at. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Filer. I will get to public comment at the end of the reports, just as an FYI. So thank you for that. We also want to remind you of other services that are available through the California Civil Rights Department's Community Conflict Resolution Unit. If your community is experiencing heightened fear, conflict, or tensions because of discriminatory practices, hate incidents, or hate crimes, the Community Conflict Resolution Unit, also known affectionately as CREW, may be able to assist. CREW offers a range of conflict resolution services to help communities effectively address hate and discrimination-based community conflict. All CREW services are free, voluntary, and confidential. CREW services can be requested by completing the request for service form online and emailing the form to crew@calcivilrights.ca.gov. We'll put the contact information for CREW in the chat. And then a couple of other announcements I just have. The Department of Justice released its 2023 California Hate Crimes Report last month. We'll send a link to that report in the chat. I think Commissioner Levin will probably talk a little bit about that too in his report later. And then a reminder that United Against Hate Week is coming up this year. It will take place between September 21st and September 27th. We'll provide a link in the chat. I encourage you to sign up for updates about events and actions in your area. And I know when we get to the subcommittee on community forums, there will be talking about our next community forum, which will be taking place during United Against Hate Week. Let's move on to the subcommittee reports, and we'll start with the subcommittee on data and research. And again, we will do public comment at the end of all the subcommittee reports. Commissioner Sinar.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. So I have a substantive update on the committee and then also a personal update. But beginning with the subcommittee update, there are a few projects I wanted to update the group about. So first, I think since the last commission meeting, we have signed a contract with the California Health Interview Survey to continue the data collection that they've been doing for the Commission and the Civil Rights Department into 2025. So just a reminder, and actually this is Chair Roybal just mentioned the kind of difficulties that some people have with reporting incidents to law enforcement, and that is one of many reasons that the CHIS survey information that we're collecting on hate incidents and hate crimes affecting Californians is so important, because it is directly gathering information from a sample of California residents on their experiences with hate. And so that project is continuing for another year and should provide a really important alternative set of data on experiences in California. So that's the first piece. We are continuing to work with the Institute for the Study of Hate at UCLA on several research projects. A couple of them include a literature review by a graduate student on mental health interventions related to hate. And at some point, we will have an executive summary or synthesis of that review to provide more broadly. There's also a literature review that another graduate student is putting together on bystander interventions, which is something that a lot of community groups have been interested in supporting. And that literature review will look at the frameworks in the literature for developing those sorts of bystander interventions, look at what community groups are doing, and also addressing safety concerns and other issues that may arise through bystander interventions. And the another project with UCLA and the Institute for Study Hate that I've briefly mentioned before is that we're continuing to plan a research convening. This is a small group convening in the fall focused on bringing together researchers specializing in educational interventions around hate and in online hate. And the idea behind that convening is to share some of the research on these issues, but mostly with the focus on prevention and trying to bridge the gap between academic research and prevention. So that is very much in the works, and we hope that that will help connect researchers with policy development. And then we have another research project on online hate that has begun, and hope to have that continue to develop with an initial literature review and then some original research as well as part of that project. So I think those are most of the substantive updates for the committee. And maybe I'll just pause in case there are any questions or comments on any of that.
Commissioner Suthers.
Yes, Commissioner, again, thank you for the report. It's very helpful. I just have a question for you. You mentioned the active bystander component. Does that connect in any way to the active bystander for law enforcement project that's being run by departments like LAPD?
The research is not specifically connected with that project. The research is generally looking at the, it's basically a synthesis of existing research, but I think it may be useful for the person who's doing that report to know of the project that you are mentioning. I'm not familiar with it, so maybe if you could say a little bit more about that or share that with the staff so that, you know, if there's any so that the graduate student knows that, and if there's research into that or assessments of that program that could be incorporated into the larger project.
Thank you. No, I'd be happy to. This was Active Bystander for Law Enforcement. It's a product that was developed by the Department of Justice after the George Floyd murder, and several departments across the country have adopted it. So I'd be happy to meet with them. Thank you for letting me know.
Thank you.
Doesn't look like there's any other questions, Commissioner Sinar.
Okay. So then I also wanted to share a personal update with the commission, which is that I will actually be stepping down from my role in the commission at the end of August. And the reason is that I have an academic fellowship for the next year, which will take me away from my day job at the law school. And I will be focusing on research and writing related to a book project through that fellowship. But as part of the condition for the fellowship, they ask people in the program to remove themselves from other time commitments and travel obligations and the like. So I will be stepping down. I'll be there for the next commission meeting at the end of August, and then stepping down at that point. So I just wanted to say that it's been a pleasure serving with all of you, and I do expect to continue work on a couple of projects with the commission. I look forward to seeing the research convening that I mentioned with UCLA, seeing that out. And also I hope to be help put together a informational presentation for the commission at some point on restorative justice interventions related to hate. That's an area that I've long been interested in, and would like to see that information shared with the commission with the hope that it might be something the commission may take up in the coming year. But I just wanted to thank everyone for the pleasure of serving with you, and to let you know about my departure.
Well, thank you for that, Commissioner Sinar. First off, congratulations on your fellowship. And I think all of us can't wait to see you as an author in terms of the work that you're doing. Commissioner Sinar and I had a chance to talk about this before the announcement. And of course, I was saddened, but very excited for what Commissioner Sonar will be doing. And I think it goes without saying that it has been an honor to serve alongside you. And I know I speak for the rest of the commission in saying that, and we wish you much luck. The good thing is that we have another month of Commissioner Sonar joining us. Commissioner Sonar will be at the August meeting. But again, I just want to extend my thanks for all of your work here and my congratulations on this fellowship. Commissioner Levin.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. You know, when we were planning for this commission, we wanted this wonderful stardust combination of community folks, academics. We really wanted academics on us, believe it or not, much to everyone else's chagrin. And the caliber of folks that we got across every position feels like, no one's going to get this, feels like the 50s Yankees. And we're losing one of our best players. So unfortunately for Commissioner Sonar, I actually have her phone number, and she knows that her mechanistic position may be coming to an end, but her influence, her impact, her intellect, her grace, and her just decency as an academic who wants to go by what credible research we have for the best in public policy. You get no better than that. And it is with tremendous, it's bittersweet because I know that you will be achieving so much more in this middle career that you're in now. And I want to just personally thank you for not only the gravitas that you gave to this commission, which we really wanted to have top scholars in there, and we have Dr. Southers in here as well, inter alia, but the perspective that you brought to this and the manner in which we are able to have these research and data subcommittee meetings, which you are all not a party to for the most part, it really represents the best of what civics can be for this country. Getting people who will bring their perspective and a rigorous adherence to research. I thank you so much for your work, and I want to let you know I will also watch out in your absence to make sure that we can have you with respect to restorative justice. I think it's among the most promising areas that we're looking at, particularly with younger and first offender, more nonviolent kind of things. This prosecution to prison pipeline that you have so eloquently discussed. So thank you. And it's a circle, because in my class was Michelle Alexander, who later became quite famous for her book, The New Jim Crow. And Stanford Law School, my alma mater, whether it's bringing back 3 strikes away from this crazy extension it had, or whether it had been your work in looking for non-carceral solutions. It's like getting the best ball player on your team, an all-star, and now she's going to another team. But you know something, there are a lot of Babe Ruth fans in Boston too, believe it or not. So just what wonderful work you did for this commission. I'm so grateful to your work, and so grateful to, additionally, your adherence to scholarship. Thank you. We're not done with you yet, and much gratitude in what I am sure will be a stunning career. And you always have a friend, not with Commissioner Levin, but with Brian Levin for as long as I live. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin.
Thank you so much, Brian. It's been a pleasure working with you as well, especially on the Research and Data Subcommittee. And I am sure we will continue to be in touch. And I wanted to thank you also for sharing so many sports and pop culture analogies. I think I have learned and grown as a human from the metaphors, which always keep us all learning about sometimes obscure references from the 1950s. And I've enjoyed that very much, in addition to partnering with you on the research and on the important work of this committee. I'm sure we will remain in touch.
Thank you so much, Commissioner Sinar. And like I said, we have another meeting with Commissioner Sinar, so we'll get to laud her again then. But thank you for sharing that with us. And again, our best wishes and congratulations on your fellowship. Let's move on to the Subcommittee on Policy Recommendations and Best Practices in Other Jurisdictions. Commissioner Che.
Yes, thank you. And I'll look forward to the August meeting when we get to fully regale you, Commissioner Sinar. Thank you so much for all your contributions. Yes, I'm pleased to present on behalf of Commissioner Cuellar and myself our committee report in 3 parts. One is on our community-based research that will be coming to conclusion at the end of August. And we've shared with you before that we had engaged a consultant, Halima Barucha. And the research is specifically on CBO responses in supporting victims and survivor needs in the wake of a hate incident. Again, this report was developed really to help us understand what the barriers are that non-governmental organizations, often frontline organizations, experience in terms of providing support to impacted individuals. So this is not research seeking input from victims and survivors themselves, but really the frontline organizations. And so I just want to thank in advance the work of Alec and Rebecca in terms of reviewing that memo and just their tremendous work in overseeing and managing that work. Which we know is on top of so many other things that they are responsible for. The second area that I wanted to report back on behalf of our committee is that many of you may recall that we were also charged with compiling and evaluating tools, practices, and resources and training from other jurisdictions, including other states and countries, in responding to reducing hate activity. And so I just want to thank Dr. Kevin Thomas for taking the lead on information gathering. Our focus is really on public-facing state agencies that have a public safety function, which includes law enforcement, because the Subcommittee on Recommendations for Law Enforcement has that, and also already focused on training. However, I did want to mention that we are taking lessons from some of the work that they've done with regard to training that's mandatory versus voluntary, including, efficacy and costs associated with training. So that's some work that is really just beginning. So we don't have too much to report on there unless Kevin wanted to add. And then finally, and I think this is on everybody's mind, and I think others have raised this earlier in the meeting, which is what we as a commission can be doing with regard to the national elections. And I think many have pointed to the fact that the Project 2025, which is essentially a blueprint for extremists, which includes promoting, dehumanizing, and promoting hate and creating a climate of fear. And of course, the attempted assassination of Trump. I think some of you may have noted that the New York Post misreported that the shooter was Chinese, and as a result, of this journalistic malpractice, it set off a flood of outrageous conspiracies and sparking fear in the Asian American community. And I think this has been mentioned before, that there's a lot that can be done at the governmental level, public officials naming the hate, condemning it, sharing resources, information. Of course, this could be an opportunity for us to promote California versus hate. Finally, I just wanted to note that since our meeting, our subcommittee meeting, of course, a lot has happened. And it's notable that, like, with the Usha Vance, who is the wife of the vice presidential nominee, and then with the recent announcement of Kamala Harris's run for presidency, that we have already seen a torrent of racist vile attacks. We know that political violence is on the rise, candidates, elected officials, but also election workers, and of course the issue of gun violence. And so I think this is a time for us to really take notice and really put into place recommendations. I don't think we have to wait for our annual report. I think these are things that we can actively do. Because we do know, for example, that women and women of color who are disproportionately targeted and experience the full weight of intersectional hate. So I think these are matters that I know many organizations across the nation, but including the state of California, are preparing for different kinds of scenarios. So this is something that we just started to talk about in our subcommittee meeting, and something that I wanted to make sure that we name. And I look forward to any questions you have and working with you on these very serious matters. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Che. The thing actually that you just said that brought to mind was, the forum that we did in December, which was around elected officials, public officials. I think it would be good, Deputy Director Watts, for the subcommittee to connect with the center there at the University of San Diego that is studying that. The other thing that it brought to my mind was what the Secretary of State, who also spoke at a community forum, and what they're doing around election workers. And is there some crossover with California versus hate and CRD, where that could be a resource, or is the state, sometimes I think our state does things beside each other and not necessarily always integrated. But is there a way for California versus hate, or is the department thinking about how to address what Commissioner Che just laid out, which is, we know there is going to be, we've already seen, and there will be increasing hate speech, hate activity, hate incidents directed at folks who are working in the electoral process. So that is something I think hopefully the subcommittee will discuss, but that the staff can look into if there are other things at the department, or that other departments like the Secretary of State are doing to track that, to catalog it, but also be able to connect people with resources and support if they need it. Commissioner Dembski.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you, Commissioner Che, for that report. I was particularly struck by your comments about journalistic malpractice. And I think a lot of the hate that we see is perpetuated through journalistic malpractice. I don't know what our commission or your committee can do in terms of recommendations on that, since we do run up against First Amendment freedom of speech rights and protection of journalists as well. But it's something that I think is super important. We saw this this type of thing happen when Hillary Clinton was running for president in 2016. The sexist attacks against her were horrific, and we don't want to see a replay of that. intensified even with a female presidential candidate who is a woman of color. So, so thank you. I really look forward to anything that our commission can do to help stem that tide and kind of nip it in the bud. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Dempsey. Commissioner Che, did you have a comment?
Yeah, thank you, Commissioner Dembski. This is a rare occasion where we were actually able to hold the New York Post accountable. Because what happened in the immediate aftermath is that they quietly updated that report to white male, because of course authorities were able to identify the shooter. There was, what really worked, we believe, was the public pressure that was put on an exposure. They actually not only updated it, but they issued an apology. And I'm not going to express my opinion on whether New York Post is what kind of an outlet it is. I mean, people can share their opinions about it, but I do feel as though that they do need to be held to account whenever possible. And sometimes it doesn't work, but we believe that the public pressure, including the Asian American Journalists Association, Stop API Hate, and others, elected officials, weighed in and talked about the harm that it caused. This wasn't an oops, this was malpractice, leading to grave harm. So that's just one example that I think that we can point to.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin, and then we'll move on to the next. Oh, and Commissioner Sinar, and then we'll move on to the next minute. Oh, Commissioner Levin, did you still have a question?
No, just it's really important. Allyship is very important. And that is why I rode herd on this story as well. Malpractice is almost a nice way to categorize it. But one thing that I have to put out as a warning is it's going to get worse. I've been doing this for many years. And you'll see in my presentation some stuff that came up in previous elections. And we are now seeing the degradation, different from arguing about her positions on public policies, whether it's with respect to criminal justice reform, cannabis reform, her support of hate crime laws. These are all things that reasonable people can discuss. We are not in that moment anymore. We are now seeing, and this is what I think is important. It's not just errant papers. We are now seeing people who have billions of dollars or many, many followers promoting false news. We have from overseas governments newspapers that look like they're real newspapers, and they're not. They're launched overseas and they're meant to be divisive. I'll talk about this more during my presentation, but I want to make sure I say two things. Number one, Commissioner Che, thank you so much for your adherence to holding these people responsible to a certain modicum of professionalism. But also, all allies have to stand against this kind of misogynistic and racist garbage that I'm not going to repeat, that we have seen go around not only the assassination attempt. By the way, Jews were thrown in a pile too initially. There's a whole group on social media, Jews did it, right? But what we are seeing now is a splintered communication landscape where disinformation folks, echo chambers, and bigots are now taking advantage of this. And we must stand as allies whenever it happens, whether it's a legacy media or whether it's folks who have who are influencers with big followings that are promoting disinformation. So Commissioner Che, thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. Commissioner Sinar?
Thank you so much for that report, Commissioner Che. So quick question on the CBO research and survivor needs. I might have just missed this in your remarks, but in what form do you think that research might be shared with the rest of the commission? You might have even said this and I just missed that, but I wanted to ask about that. I think that research is incredibly important and would love to hear more about it substantively at some point. And then I think this question might be maybe more not just for Commissioner Che, but in thinking through the policy recommendations in our annual report. There were a wealth of recommendations in that report, some of which are relevant to, actually many of which might be relevant to the I think the feared uptick in hate violence and political violence during the election season. And in terms of getting, what more can we be doing in terms of getting those recommendations from the extensive report form and making them more accessible to those who are in a position to act on it? So for instance, I'm thinking just about, one section of the report addressed findings from the Half Moon Bay and Monterey Park shootings, and had a recommendation for a rapid response team at a statewide level. That's just one of many examples of things that we recommended in that report that would be useful to think about as we move into this really volatile political time. And so I guess the question is there, how do we as a group plan on, first, I think the report itself, I imagine is still at the governor's office at this point, and so not yet made available to the public in general, but even before that happens, after that happens, how do these findings that we have already developed in the course of the research that's been done and the work that we've done as a commission, how do we operationalize those, especially at this time?
I'm going to take the first one because that is really directed towards the committee. And then I think what Commissioner Sinar is raising is really a conversation for everyone here. And Alec and Rebecca, are you in a good position to just share where things are at in terms of the actual, it's really a memo. And if you wouldn't mind just sharing that in the timeline.
Rebecca, you've been leading this work. I don't want to put you on the spot. We should win.
Yeah, no problem. Yes, so our consultant Halima Barucha has drafted a memo about 40-50 pages long to address some research questions related to CBO's response to victims. And so we're in the process of reviewing the memo, and we'll be doing so through the summer, through August, with our consultant, and kind of incorporating a few updates along the way. And hopefully she would be able to do a brief informational presentation for the commission once the findings are kind of in a finalized form to be able to share with everybody.
Thank you. And on the second piece that you referenced, Commissioner Che, I think, why don't we, Deputy Director Watts, why don't we talk about how to calendar that discussion, hopefully for the next commission meeting in August. The report is still under review. They are going through and double checking everything, including the footnotes. Because there are over 300 of them. It is a much more substantial report than it was the previous year. But why don't Director Watts, Deputy Director Watts, why don't you and I connect about that and make sure we create time in the next. And then Dr. Goodsell, what is the timeline in terms of what you're thinking that some of that could be presented? Is that by the next commission meeting, or will it be later than that?
I don't believe it will be ready by the next commission meeting in August. I believe the memo will be finalized in August, and the consultant could prepare a report for the commission, a brief report for the commission in a future meeting after that.
Okay, great. Thank you. Commissioner Suthers. And then we'll move to the next committee report.
Thank you. I'll be brief. Commissioner Chase, thank you for that very important information. As you know, I'm in the extremist violence space, did not know about the post incident. I'll just share for the group's edification that, needless to say, since last year, I've been working with a number of colleagues in my space last year for the anticipated political violence that was going to happen this year. We didn't think it would start to happen this quickly, but things have changed in the last 2 weeks. Just in yesterday's my meeting yesterday with another commission I serve on, the uptick in accusations of DEI against public safety professionals and those organizations only hiring minorities and women was unbelievable. I had to listen to FBI Director Chris Wray in his opening statements this morning at a hearing defend the hiring practices of the FBI, who are also being accused of DEI. So that has become the code, that has become the mission now. And I just want to say again, thank you for your work, and to everybody on this commission, if there's any way that I can be of any use to you, to any forums or talks that we have in this space, especially as they are targeting public safety and law and military personnel, only hiring women and minorities, please let me know, because this is only going to get worse. We anticipated this, and I just don't know what else to say about how unnerving it is. I know how qualified people are in this space to now be attacked and have their characters assassinated because of what they look like. So thank you for the work.
Thank you, Commissioner Suthers. Let's go to the subcommittee on recommendations for law enforcement. Commissioner Damsky.
Good morning, everyone. My report's going to be very brief today. Our subcommittee has not met since our last public meeting. Commissioner Suthers needed to step down from our subcommittee for professional commitments that required a lot of his time. And we had Commissioner Salcedo appointed to fill that spot, but Commissioner Salcedo was on sabbatical, and Maria Roman Taylorson will be filling in for Commissioner Salcedo on our subcommittee. Our first meeting as a new group will be next Monday. And the only other update I have for you is we have not yet heard from the Commission on Peace Officer Standards and Training about the status of the video that we were working with them to create on AB 449. Hopefully we should hear from them in the next coming months. That concludes my report. Thank you.
Thank you,
Oh, and before I sign off completely, I want to thank Commissioner Suthers for his contributions to our subcommittee. I miss you there a lot.
Thank you, Commissioner Damsky. Subcommittee on community forums, Commissioners Filer and Cuellar.
Good afternoon, everybody. I will be giving the report today on behalf of our subcommittee. I sit on with Commissioner Filer. So we are actively working on the next couple of community forums. I'm happy to say that the next community forum that we will be doing will be held September 26th, and it's going to be aimed at community members with disabilities, and how they experience hate, both mentally and physically. We are actually working with another commission, the Civil Rights Council, actually. So this will be a joint community forum. It will be held in the Bay Area. We are still looking for some locations. If anybody has any contacts or knows of any locations that might be available, please let us know. We are looking at an evening event, possibly from 5 to 7. We are still, like I said, looking for presenters, and we'll be narrowing down the times more as we get the presenters. So that's the first one that we're actually actively working on. And like Chair Roybal said, we'll be during the week of the United Hate Week, September 26th. So we're hoping that we'll be a big crowd. And then the next community forum that we will be working on after the September 26th, it will be held in Fresno, and it's going to be around how communities come together to respond to hate. And so we are still in the very early planning on that one, but I just wanted to let you guys know about that one. And I'm not too sure on what we're targeting. I think November, is that right, CC or Monica? Can you guys correct me on that one?
I think it's November, potentially the beginning of December.
Thank you, CC. So we are still narrowing down some dates, and we are probably going to be targeting the undocumented community as well as the Hmong community. But again, and that one will be a joint community forum. We'll be working with the Racial Equity Commission on that one. So again, just a little bit of those. If there's anything I did not say, CC, please feel free to jump in. But that concludes my report.
Thank
I
you,
think you said it
Commissioner
all.
Blair.
Thank you.
The one place I would suggest is the campus of the California Endowment, which I know Commissioner Che knows well, as being a former endowment staff member. They're in Oakland, and they have a facility there that's pretty great. But if I can probably give you a contact there, but we can talk about that offline. Commissioner Che.
Yes, I was going to just offer resources as well. I think you were looking for the East Bay, if I'm not mistaken. But Asian Health Services is also a Stop the Hate grantee and a regional lead. So they may be a great resource. I know they have fairly large conference rooms. And then I do have contacts for the Fresno area, especially if you are trying to highlight undocumented in the Hmong community. And so perhaps I can share that with the staff who can then pass it along to yourself. But please use me as a resource as
Oh, that would be fantastic, Commissioner Che. We really need some contacts in the Fresno area. So that would be wonderful if you can pass that on to Deputy Director Watts. That would be great.
Happy to do so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, and thank you for that report. There is no report on the subcommittee on funding. I do want to make a couple of announcements that have come up, and then we'll take a break. One from the crew team, the Community Conflict Resolution Unit. In particular, this is to you, Sean Gilbert, who's spoken in public comment. The crew team is available to consult with local councils and other government bodies and can help create or find appropriate training. So I encourage you to reach out to the crew team. We'll put the crew team email in the chat. And then also from the California Department of Social Services, from Rami Chand, who's joining us today, we'll be sharing the list of organizations who have received grants from the Stop the Hate grant program. And provide services to victims and survivors of hate, including some of the organizations that some of the commissioners are from, as well as their families. We'll post a list of organizations in the chat, so just folks know who those grantees are and who are providing support to victims and survivors of hate. And those links will go into the chat. It's just about 10:32. We'll take a 13-minute break and reconvene at 10:45. Thanks, everyone. We'll get started again as soon as I see that the commissioners have their cameras back on. All right, let's go ahead and reconvene. And before we move to Commissioner Levin's presentation, is there any public comment about any of the subcommittee or chair's reports? Monica, is there any public comment?
Looks like we have a comment from Sean Gilbert.
Hi, welcome back, Sean. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Chair Robile. I appreciate you giving me the information and the contact info for the crew team. And I neglected to say congratulations to the commission for their 1-year anniversary. I was fortunate enough to be already working with Rebecca Monroe last year because she served as a panelist on one of the League of Women Voters Diablo Valley's community conversations programs. Not knowing how on the cutting edge we were at the time when we reached out to her, and Deputy Director Watts, who referred her to us. So I want to say thank you. I've been a part of following the commission for this past year, and it's been extremely enlightening. And in regards to that same presentation, Commissioner Sinar was gracious enough to accept being a participant. However, she had a conflict and was leaving for a journey. But I feel so fortunate to have gotten to know her this past year as a commissioner on this a very important commission that the state established. And I want to wish her the best. She's been a graceful person, a kind person in all of her very thoughtful insights and questions she poses on many topics. So thank you, and I wish you the best. And I hope I can reach out to you again sometime in the future. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Sean, for that comment. Shanna, is there any public comment in the room in Los Angeles?
There's no comments.
All right, thank you so much. Let's move on to our next agenda item, which is a presentation on national multi-city hate crime trends by our amazing colleague, Commissioner Brian Levin. Commissioner Levin.
Thank you so much. And if Alec would be kind enough to post the PowerPoint, we'll begin. And thank you so much. And thank you for just how kind everyone was at San Diego Pride. Let's do it every week.
Is the presentation displaying?
Yes, we see it.
Okay, fantastic.
Oh, okay. You see it? Okay, I don't, but that's okay. If we could just go past the title page onto our first page of charts, that would be great. This is very similar to the data truncated version that was presented at the White House just weeks ago. So yeah, let's go to that chart. Look, what it shows is hate crimes federally collected have been going up. We know that, and what I think is also interesting to point out, though, is that it goes up around particular events as well. You can't just look at it, oh, went up this year, down another year. Also, really important, there are vast geographic, jurisdictional, and group bias deserts where we simply have massive underreporting. We can still discern sometimes trends, but this really represents massive underreporting. So look really for the overall trends as opposed to the numbers. Recognize, though, that we often have a paucity with regard to anti-disabled, some types of gender hate crime, immigrants, the Asian community, Latinos and others. So just put that disclaimer up. By the way, another disclaimer, it revolves around the Attorney General's report, which showed a 7% decline. We are seeing intermittently, but nationally, particularly with some large states, issues with data platform merging, impacting the filtering that then occurs from when local agencies send in their data to what the state authorities are able to do, because we're going nationally to something called an incident-based reporting system, which will be great. We'll get much more data for each event. But right now, for instance, Los Angeles City, their raw data, which can be filtered and oftentimes will go down as filtering occurs. Their raw data showed over 840 hate crimes. The AG's report showed about 440, so about half, when previously we did not see that level. It's usually somewhat of a filtering, but not like that. Also issues in other cities. So we'll talk about that in a second. If we could go to the next slide, please, that shows a bunch of colorful charts. So since we're having an election and I've been getting a lot of questions, not just from commissioners, with respect to election times. And in the previous charts, for instance, we saw a little bump where it said Obama election and nomination. Interestingly enough, we are now at a historic point, which should be a point, whatever political party you're in. And you can just look at John McCain's concession speech about how meaningful it is for a pluralistic democracy to battle it out over ideas and to celebrate inclusion. Yeah, John McCain. Look at his concession speech. We're not seeing that now. We're seeing the most horrendous, misogynistic, and other racial and other type of stereotyping and conspiracizing. And it happens at various strata. We know when we're looking at, for instance, the social science data, right? So let's go look. Last election time, look at that. November 9th, the day after election, worst day for hate crimes over 13 years. Just put it in just because we had such monumental changes going on just recently. Then look at what happened. We took that data on the top left, along with Jim Nolan and A. Thompson, and then we normalized it, the hate speech in that time when 4chan was the place to look for that kind of garbage. And look, just around election time, it became one line with those day-to-day ticks. One more thing, and it's getting worse. Look below. See that chart? You'll see increases, and those increases are in Russian racially divisive ads. Before the election, that then went up. They increased them on the way to the election. So we're seeing all kinds of interference, siloing, all this kind of stuff. And remember, even as you may see a group decline, even over a year or two, just a catalytic event and racist or prejudiced rhetoric around it correlates to these increases. If we could go down to the next page. Now what you're seeing is every election year, hate crime up. We went over this, but when you focus in, I want to give you some value added here. Look at the different groups that were targeted. So 2020, combination of COVID and social justice protests. What do we see attached to that? The stereotyping, and look at that, anti-Asian, anti-multiple races, anti-Black. So what we're often seeing is kind of adjacent prejudices go up. Other race, for instance, or the LGBTQ community, for instance, in a particular various types. Now, if we look at then the bottom right, look at that 2020 George Floyd protest. What's really interesting is when some statements were made by then President Trump, when the looting starts, the shooting starts, or his comments with regard to the Lafayette Park peaceful protests, which were met with force, those were among the worst days in modern recordation history, going back to 91 for anti-Black, right? But also look at that midterm elections. Remember the conflictual one where the Senate was pivoting. It was a very closely paid attention to election, impeachment, presidential elections. Bottom line, election years, political events, big things. Let's go to the next slide because we don't have a lot of time, and I want to finish this as fast as I can. On the next slide, we look at high transmitters. When candidate Trump launched his campaign and talked derisively about Latinos, hate crimes against Latinos did not immediately go up. However, once he became #1 in the polls, we looked at, for instance, on the bottom left, look at that San Bernardino terror attack. We saw an increase correlated to the terror attack. Then a few days later, Muslim ban proposal, look at that. Anti-Muslim, anti-Arab hate crimes increased. Then Lisa Nakashima did a beautiful job on that. Another chart that we did together, look at that, Charlottesville. Hate crimes did not peak rather. That month was the third worst month of that decade up to that time. But look at that. It peaked after the Very Fine People statements. So when we see this kind of stuff normalized about women candidates, DEI stuff, all this is part of a flotsam, a mixed together flotsam of toxic stereotypes that labels not only different specific groups, but associations. So in 2020, it was BLM Antifa socialists that went up in derisive comments as well. Let's go to the very next one. We're not going to spend a lot of time. Bush, after 9/11, look at that. When he spoke about tolerance towards Muslims, guess what? Hate crimes did not go up to pre-speech levels. Anyway, let's go, because we're going to just wrap it up now, to the next slide. And that looks at the 10 largest cities. Again, this is with the raw data from Los Angeles. Hopefully, and we're seeing this, by the way, across the country. It looks like Georgia, other states will when they update their numbers, that is supposed to update automatically the FBI numbers. I hope that happens. We had prior years where certain states did not merge well into the platforms, and it impacted the overall national numbers, since California is 12% of the population. But let's look at this, top 10 cities. All were up except Philadelphia, which hit a record the year before. So New York, LA at records, Austin, Chicago, I believe close. A lot of records on anti-Jewish. Let's go though to the next slide, because this goes with the groups that we were able to break down, and there are even more. But look at that. Anti-Arab hate crimes up 136%. That led what we saw, and that's going back to a real multi-year high. 2001 for most of these was the biggest and worst year, but look at this. This is undeniably bad. And by the way, again, vast deserts. We're not even getting reporting from everywhere. So it gives you an idea. In other words, even with the data limitations that are seen nationally, and even with ones that we have, but what do we have? We have high reporting, more stable cities with regard to data, but we even see changes. You'll see that in a second. Anti-Muslim up 51%, anti-Jewish up 48% to a record. We had the second highest year for FBI reported hate crimes in 2022. 2023 will be a record. And by the way, we're seeing those numbers get blown away in 2024 in places like New York and Chicago. And it looks like when we get some updates from LA, that's going to point that way too. Gay male up 33%, Latino up 16%. The overall, by the way, is this one, not what you'll see in a later slide, about 15% for all the 38 cities we looked at. Interestingly enough, we talked about associational. Transgender was up more last year than anti-gay male was, for instance. So we see this kind of associational lava lamp, if you will, as time goes on, against who's the other. And now we're seeing groups. Anti-Black up 4.4%, not a lot, but remember 2020 was a big pivotal year when anti-Black hate crimes, which had been declining as a proportion of all hate crimes, every year since 96 reversed course, and we had the second highest number of African-American hate crimes that we saw just in the last year or so. So even though, anyway, in other words, we're seeing compounded increases. So if you can look at the different cities, look at that. New York City, we don't have a showing. Maybe they're putting it under other race and ethnicity, but that's why while we don't filter to the federal standards, we use the local stuff. What you can still get is a quicker indicator of what the trends are. Look at that anti-Muslim up, that's in the blue for that particular slide. Anti-Jewish hate crimes, again, up big and hitting records in various cities. Anti-gay up as well. If we could go just to the next slide, I'm gonna just go through them real quick. These are the raw data coming out of California cities. The Attorney General's office showed, for instance, about half of the victims that LAPD numbers showed. So we're going with those. Those are victim numbers. The rest are event numbers. So they're all equalized. But San Jose was down. San Francisco, San Diego, LA were up. Let's go to the next slide real quick. By the way, Las Vegas, they just adjusted their numbers, so that's wrong. Down at the bottom, the increase for the 38 cities was 15%, and the increase for the top 10 was 16%. Very consistent, but remember, different demographics in the 50 largest cities. They're less white, for instance, whereas the nation as a whole is majority white. But about 20% approximately of cities declined. And if we could go just to the very next one, this also shows by city who's doing the better job at reporting. Look at that: Boston, Washington, LA, Portland, Seattle. Cities that have hate crime units, for the most part, are the ones that have these higher rates. Again, let's look at this charting, and remember, it should be a bigger pie because we have massive underreporting with regard to certain groups, particularly in certain locations. Immigrant communities, Asian American community, Native Hawaiian community, Native American community, especially these metro areas, the Sikh community. So we have a literal scroll of we don't have the kind of information that we would like to have. If we could look at those three, though, Jewish, gay, male, Black are about 2/3 of the reported hate crime. What we have to make sure, especially when we know various communities, we're not getting even the filtered stuff in. How do we know this? Hey, let's look at the Stop AAPI Hate stuff, which helped us get the COVID-19 Act passed. I was doing complementary data analysis at the time. They had wonderful stuff. What they didn't have was what happened the year before. And what we showed was a 224% increase just in reported crimes. But if you took out the crimes from what was in their study, it was double, really, particularly for assault, it was double what we were seeing in the report. So we know that many of these crimes are falling between reportational cracks. If we could just go to the next slide.
Commissioner Levin, you have about 2 more minutes in your allotted time, FYI.
Fantastic, because we're about to wrap it up. And look, I'd rather have longer time on the parade float. That was so much fun for me. We're doing this again. We'll talk offline. But anyway, just look at these. These are the 1991 to 2022 for a variety of different groups, from anti-Black to anti-Latino. And it also shows what happened in the previous years with the multi-city studies. So the direction is generally up, but remember, resilience, remember disinformation, political years, and remember conflicts overseas. So for instance, we had seen like declines in anti-Asian hate crime, and then President Trump started saying things in 2018 and in 2020 around various events, and we saw these crimes hit multi-year highs. So I'll answer any questions that you all have, but I want to thank my fellow commissioners for this opportunity. It's so important that you get the most cutting edge information, and this is the best that we have right now.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. Are there questions or thoughts from the commissioners? Commissioner Damsky.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. I was looking at your slides. They're a little hard to see because the numbers are really small on my screen. I'm looking also to see, well, I see in this last slide, anti-Muslim hate crimes, but I didn't see a whole lot of that. Is that not tracked as much? Are they lumped in together with anti-Arab hate crimes? What's the story with reporting statistics on those?
I'm sorry, which slide are you referring to?
The one that is on my screen right now is 6.
Oh, that's, look, massive underreporting with the Muslim and Arab community. We go back to a Pew 2017 study, which looks at their skepticism with regard to reporting to government and police. What I think is really interesting, though, in 2022, for instance, anti-Sikh hate crimes reported actually exceeded anti-Muslim. But these are through 2022. When you put 2023 on top, what it'll show for anti-Muslim, as I said, a big increase for anti-Arab. We'll also see many jurisdictions be reporting gaps for those groups. So these are only through 2022. But for 2023, what you're going to see are increases for anti-Muslim and literally for all these groups that are displayed in those multiple charts. Anti-Jewish was on another slide. That hit the second highest level since 91. That's going to be blasted through for 2023 and likely for 2024. So the reason these are cut off at 2022 is because the FBI does not have data out yet. That's kind of the gap that we try to fill in.
I have one other question, if I may. I
Sure.
noticed that when you are looking at the hate crimes reported by across different cities, for instance, San Diego had a much higher percentage of anti-Jewish hate crimes, and other cities had higher percentages of different kinds of hate crimes, like anti-Black hate crimes. Is there any analysis done into why those differences are happening by those cities? Is it purely related to the population demographics?
A lot of it is related to population demographics, but it's also a lot of it's around other things like, is there a central place where a particular group demographically is more clustered geographically? In other words, making it easier for someone to go in, into a Jewish section of town, an Asian section of town, or a quote Jewish section of town. So there are dynamics that way. There are also dynamics related to mass transit, and that affects different groups. For instance, we know that we've seen many anti-Asian hate crimes take place on mass transit. So you'll have a variety of impactors, but generally, Jews are twice as represented in the top 21 metro areas at about 4.4%, according to the American Jewish Yearbook, compared to about 2.2% for the rest of the country as a whole. So those places where you have a combination of things like mass transit, cultural and business districts, as well as other locations and population density, that's why you'll see these increases. But generally, New York, Boston, Philadelphia, Los Angeles, to a lesser extent, San Diego, big increases in many of the city's records.
Thank you.
Commissioner Che.
Yes, so thank you so much, Commissioner Levin. Your reports are always very robust and lots of data points, and I'm hoping that we can also get copies of the slide deck post meeting. One area that really intrigued me was your comment about catalytic events. And it's something that we experienced at Stop API Hate. For example, after the Atlanta area shooting, we received numerous reports of some of that reporting the Atlanta area shooting, but also reporting news accounts and experiences that they've had. And but it wasn't necessarily how should I say this? It was in large part, we feel because we were also in the media, that they found our reporting center and reported an incident that may have happened many months before, or so I'd love for you to share your insights about the correlation between, catalytic events. And I know that you're relying on law enforcement data, which is different than the self-reported data that we get.
Yeah, thank you. There's a resiliency, and this is really important. First of all, when a group is targeted at one point and things go up a lot, for instance, we saw this with attacks relating to the Asian American Native Hawaiian community. Peak in March and April around increase in hospitalizations, but also, I'm not even going to repeat this stuff. Terrible commentary by the Secretary of State and a sitting U.S. Congressperson a week before the President of the United States uses degrading language, and we saw that increase. People ask me all the time, how do you know that there's a connection? Well, we know from prior examples where there's been a catalytic event, it kind of petered out, and then a high influencer says or does something, and we see that bounce. We then saw that in January of 2021. Then we saw a record. And what I'm concerned about is we have so many conflicts around the world and a well-oiled conflict machine of disinformation that, God forbid, something happening between China and Taiwan or some other country. For the bigots, it almost doesn't matter, because not only are they puerile ignoramuses, that associational. In other words, what we saw was, and it was, when you look at the social surveys, it was done on ideology. People who had completely false stereotypes and conspiracy theories about Asians, and they would lump them together. Not all of them. Chinese Americans were attacked the most. But I am very concerned about the catalytic event and the associational aspect, because many of these people will lash out at whoever they think is either in that group or associated with that group in some way. Also, you touched on something I think is very important. Research, and this is at the White House too, research showing that among the least reporting communities is the umbrella of the Asian American communities. That's why to have you on this commission is such a wonderful thing. Who could we have better with that? By the way, I don't just use law enforcement data, it's often the quickest. I use also hate rhetoric online too, among other things. But one of the things that I am concerned about now is we now have a presidential candidate who is an intersection of so many different groups that I think we'll see something that we saw before, and we saw this in other elections, where in other words, other race, other religion joins this anti-Black cadre or anti-Asian cadre. And that's why I think messaging is so important, and it looks like it is going in the wrong direction. We have Errol Southers here. He will confirm this, because he was in charge of doing various things, including federal law enforcement. When hate crimes against Obama went up in 2008, they went up right before his nomination and right before his election. Whereas when Red won in 2016, it was almost a celebration afterwards. And what did we see at the same time? And he will back me up. He's where I got the data from. Another great person to have, right? What we found was not only did anti-Black hate crimes increase to multi-year monthly levels, but daily threats against candidate Obama were almost 4 times what President Bush was hearing. So that's why your suggestions with regard to Project 2025 are so important, because there is so much incorrect information and othering and stereotyping that this strata of who is a legitimate target for various types of aggression, including the kind that you track so well, is very important. Last point on your research. When we backdated Southern Poverty Law Center's similar portal, self-reporting portals, yes, people will say there are all kinds of limitations. Yes, there are. There's all kinds of limitations in all kinds of data. But what did it show? when we overlaid the increases after the catalytic event or after somebody said something with regard to Southern Poverty Law Center's work, or looking at what was the worst days that you were coming out with, which we'd love to get like more exact, but it correlated. So one of the great things about all the work that's being done is we can overlay this. And that's why it's so important. Anything that we can do to aid measures like Stop AAPI Hate, because we know the Asian American community is among the lowest reporting. So when we see declines, some of those declines will be because, yes, there's not that terrible catalytic event where people are saying on high influencing platforms things, but I think we're seeing, and I can't prove it, but I think we're seeing a more precipitous drop because people are less aware of where to report than at the time when things were so historically high that someone watching the news would be able to almost repeat where to report. That's not the case today. And that's why I think we have to get the messaging out about not only California versus hate, but the excellent work that you're doing, which I want to just take this opportunity to thank you again for.
Commissioner Sinar.
I just wanted to add a point about the research on catalytic events. There's actually quite a few studies now looking at data related to various kinds of catalytic events, sometimes in the form of acts of violence like 9/11, the post 9/11 surge in hate crimes. You can see that actually on some of Commissioner Levin's slides, but was quite extraordinary and significant. So some catalytic events are of that nature, an act of violence or something that causes backlash against communities that are linked in public stereotyping or with the the perpetrators or those deemed to be responsible. So there's that kind of catalytic event. Catalytic events often also take the form of elections, and there's research not only into the 2016 presidential election, for instance, which, as Commissioner Levin noted, was followed by a spike in hate crimes, but also things like the Brexit vote in Britain. So when the British population voted to separate from the European Union, there was spikes in hate crimes, and there's several research studies on that. And I think the only point that I wanted to make about that is that there are a couple of different things that can happen with catalytic events. Sometimes it's a backlash response that seems to be causing the surge in hate violence. And in other times, it's not backlash so much as that an event seems to confirm or sanction a set of, say, anti-immigrant norms. So that's kind of the explanation that's often given for things like the Trump election and Brexit, that when President Trump won in 2016, or when a majority of British people voted to separate from the EU, which was linked to a lot of anti-immigrant rhetoric, then that sent the message to the population at large that actually a lot of people are supportive of that kind of prejudice. And so it's it's that sort of messaging that comes out of those sorts of events. So I just wanted to point out that there's a couple of different dynamics around those events, but there's actually quite a few research studies looking at these various incidents over a period of a couple of decades.
Commissioner Che.
Thank you so much for that. And I think that many of us have experienced this notion of being very worried about who it is that may have caused the harm and the backlash that our communities will experience as a result. And so one of the things that we had conversations of, what if the shooter was an Asian person? It still doesn't give license to then, again, attack other Asians. And attack Asians or paint them as a threat. And it's one of the reasons why we talk about the destructive nature of permission structures. So when you have elected officials, people of influence, using racist rhetoric, and we're seeing a torrent of that now, including attacks against the DEI attack, and then also having elected officials say that, for example, presidential nominee Kamala Harris was a DEI pick, and in fact challenging her intelligence, et cetera. You're seeing the effects of that, including the built-in permission structures that are encoded everywhere now, and especially in the Project 2025 blueprint. So thank you for that. Appreciate it.
Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Levin, for your presentation and for the commission's discussion. Let's move on now to commission member announcements. If you have an announcement, please use the raise hand button and I will call on you. Commissioner Adamski, I know you have one. We'll start with you.
Thank you, Chair. As our Chair Roybal mentioned earlier, we had San Diego Pride Parade here this weekend. I forwarded, here are some photos from our wonderful float. What you don't see is the screaming lime green Jeep that pulled this moving, there it is, billboard forward. And there's Commissioner Levin. So we had, it was a great day. I got to ride in the Jeep with the air conditioning. It was nice for me. Everybody else walked and danced. And I want to say I've participated in a lot of Pride parades. This one, the response we got from people as we walked by was one of tremendous love and appreciation and support. The messaging of the different items on our moving billboard was really one of love, welcome, and acceptance. And I think that was really well appreciated by our parade watchers. The other thing I wanted to mention is there's a conference happening here in San Diego, September 22nd and 23rd. It is at UCSD. The National Conflict Resolution Center is having a research on combating anti-Semitism and Islamophobia, best challenges for challenging times. And I will put the link for that event in the chat. And thank you everybody today for a robust conversation and wonderful presentations as always.
Thank you, Commissioner Adamski. Any other commission member announcements? Commissioner Cuellar.
Yes, I just have an announcement. My community will be having our cultural big time event in August, the fourth week of August. So August 23rd to the 25th. I just wanted to invite the commission and also the public. It's a public event, so feel free to come and learn about our culture and about our tribe. We'll have dancers from all of Northern California and a lot of vendors and different type of booths. So I just wanted to throw that out there and see if anybody wanted to come. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Cuellar, for the invitation. Any other announcements? All right, now we will move on to public comment on items not on the agenda. I'll start in Los Angeles. Shanna, is there anyone in LA, in the room in LA that has a public comment?
No comments.
Thank you, Shanna. Is there any other public comments? I see there is one public comment, hand raised in the attendees. Welcome. You have 3 minutes for your public comment. It doesn't sound like that. Let's move on to, I don't see any other public comment. Commissioner Levin, but I see your hand is up.
Yeah, thank you. I just wasn't quick enough to get in, earlier. So thank you. Just wanted to bring up just a few quick things. One, congratulations, Marshall Wong. Decades of service to LA County Human Relations Commission. I would have come to the party, but was on the East Coast. Also, Norma Lopez, who has served our community so beautifully. with Orange County Human Relations is moving on to another task involving education. So wanted to recognize her service. I also wanted to extend again my deepest sympathies to the parents and family of Blaze Bernstein. The trial in the murder, the hate murder of their son was just completed with a conviction, and I just wanted to say that their grace and community involvement in fighting prejudice is well recognized and very much appreciated. Last thing, because I get in trouble. It wasn't just San Diego Pride who treated me so well in the last week or two. What a wonderful event. This is going to be a problem. Brian's going to be showing up every year now. You know, it's not just going to be some of the other places I used to go because I'm in San Diego more. So thank you for the wonderful folks at San Diego Pride and all the folks and the relatives, allies, and supporters who were there, who showed also so much joy. Lastly, Zocalo Public Square, they did a beautiful Inland Empire Against Hate function that will be on public television later. And we had wonderful commentators, including those who worked with the ACLU, those who worked for Mapping Black California, and a wonderful assembly person. So thank you for that. And again, I would be remiss if I did not thank not only San Diego Pride, but our two wonderful San Diego commissioners, Andrea Badamski. I just have such admiration and affection for you, and double that with our chair, whose just kindness is so damn infectious. He couldn't stay just with one float. Everybody wanted to say hi to him, including me. You are such a special person, and you too will be taken out for a meal whenever we are in the same cities. My dear friend and just wonderful liaison. What a fantastic ambassador you are for the state of California. Thank you so much. What a joyous, happy event, and it wouldn't have been it without you. So thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Levin. San Diego Pride has a very special place in my heart. I, many decades ago, was on the staff of San Diego Pride as its volunteer coordinator, and got to serve as Grand Marshal of the Pride Parade in 2017. It was one of the best days of my life. It was an incredible moment. So our next item is future agenda items. If you have a future agenda item, please reach out to Alec or myself so that we can calendar those. I know some of you have already done that and are engaged in conversations with the staff about it. We will take some of the stuff that we talked about today, including the suggestions from Commissioner Che about having a broader conversation around some of the topics that we talked about today. And then, of course, when some of the research is complete by some of the work that's being done with the staff, we'll put that in a future agenda item. It is now 11:28, so I will, we are done with our agenda. I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Chair.
Motion to adjourn by Commissioner Damsky. Is there a second? Seconded by Commissioner Che. All those in favor of adjourning, please say aye.
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 This meeting of the California Commission on the State of Hate is adjourned on Wednesday, July 24th at 2024 at 11:29 a.m. I wish you all a very good day and rest of the week. It is a pleasure to see all of you, and I'll look forward to seeing you at our next commission meeting at the end of August. Have a really great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye, everybody.